Jay knew the moment the alpha across the room turned around. Mia was holding his arm. She turned to point Jay out across the loft, and the alpha at her side turned with her, and everything in Jay went still. It was Jason. The man Jay had spent 4 months sleeping with and 8 months trying to forget. The man who did not know that the reason Jay's sweater would not lie flat tonight was his. Their eyes met for less than a second. Jay watched the alpha's face do the work of arranging itself, the widening, the recalculation, the polite mask sliding into place over whatever had moved underneath. Then Mia was pulling him forward, beaming, and the alpha was extending his hand, and Jay was extending his, and the handshake placed Jason's palm flat against the rise of Jay's pregnant belly. The pup kicked hard, the way he always did when something startled him, and Jay watched the father of his child smile at him, hand still resting on his son, and say, "Nice to meet you." Before we dive in, let me know in the comments where you are watching from. Now, sit back, relax, and enjoy today's story. Jay had met Jason on a dating app the way most people did now, without ceremony and without anyone's mother's permission. He had not been looking for anything. He had been looking for someone to take his mind off the fact that his apartment was too quiet, and his job was too sweet, and his life had begun to feel like a cake without salt. The profile was short. One photo of a man in a charcoal coat on a balcony at night, his face mostly in shadow. One line of text. Real estate. Bad at dating apps. Better in person. Most Omegas Jay knew would have swiped past it. Jay swiped right because the man in the photograph looked like he was not trying, and Jay was tired of men who tried. They met for a drink at a place Jay had never heard of, the kind of place an alpha picks when he wants to be in control of the lighting. Jason was waiting when Jay walked in. He stood up. He did not comment on Jay's height or his sweater. He pulled out the chair. He ordered without theater. Then he looked across the table at Jay with the clear-eyed assessment of a man reading a deposit slip, and somehow it was not unkind. "What do you do?" he asked. "I make wedding cakes," Jay said. "For a living." "For a living? That sounds expensive. Other people's weddings usually are." Jason smiled. A fraction. The fraction of a smile an alpha gives when an omega has surprised him. And Jay felt his own scent warm at the edges without permission, the burnt butter shifting towards something rounder, and that was the night he should have left. He did not leave. He stayed for another drink, then for dinner. Then he went home with Jason to a converted warehouse loft in a neighborhood he had never been in, where the alpha unlocked the door and held it open and did not say a single thing that sounded like a line, and Jay walked through it. They agreed on what it was the next morning over toast. Jason made the toast. He asked Jay if he wanted butter or jam, and Jay said butter, and the alpha brought him butter on a small white plate with a small white knife. Jay ate it, sitting up in the alpha's bed with the alpha's juniper scent on his throat. "I am not looking for anything," Jason said. "Neither am I." Good. Good. It was good. For months. They saw each other when their schedules aligned and did not see each other when they did not. Jason did not pretend he was going to text first. He did not pretend he was going to call when he said he would. He was honest the way a man is honest when he has decided in advance that he does not owe anyone any softness. Jay liked it. Jay liked it until the morning Jason came over with 2 coffees and sat at the small kitchen table where Jay decorated cakes in the evenings and said, "I think we should stop seeing each other." And Jay was ready. He was ready because he had known. He had known for weeks. He nodded. He said, "Okay." He took the coffee. He walked Jason to the door, and Jason stopped in the doorway and looked at him with an expression Jay could not read, and the alpha said, "You are good, Jay. I am sorry I am the way I am about this." "You do not have to be sorry." "I know. I am anyway." He left. Jay closed the door behind him and went to the bathroom and looked at himself in the mirror and decided, standing there, that the lesson was to be more careful next time. He drank the coffee. He went to work. He finished a tiered vanilla bean cake for a couple who had brought him a photograph of the cake they had been served at their parents' wedding, and he felt something move under his ribs that he assumed was the espresso. It was not the espresso. Weeks later, in a pharmacy bathroom on his lunch break, 2 pink lines decided his life for him. He thought about telling Jason. He sat on the edge of his tub that night and held his phone and scrolled to the alpha's name and stared at it. He thought about every conversation they had ever had. Jason's measured voice in the dark saying he was not built for the kind of life other people wanted. Jason's clear-eyed assessment over toast. Jason saying, "I am sorry I am the way I am about this." In a doorway, and Jay understanding even then that what the alpha was apologizing for was not the breakup, but the shape of his own soul, which was not built to stay. He did not text him. He put the phone face down on the bath mat and pressed a hand to a belly that was not yet showing, and decided, in the privacy of his own bathroom, that he was not going to be the omega who ambushed an alpha into fatherhood. He had been raised by a mother who taught him that needing things made you a burden, and the lesson had taken. He had a job. He had a small apartment. He had savings. He believed everything he needed to do this alone. He did it alone, for months. Prenatal vitamins, appointments, questions written down in a small notebook by the bed. Used baby clothes washed in the kind of detergent the books recommended and folded in a drawer he had emptied of his own old shirts. His boss at the bakery, an omega who had raised 3 of her own, said, "Honey, we will make it work." And they did. He told a handful of friends. Not the inner ring. The inner ring had a way of asking questions Jay did not have answers to, and he had decided early that the people he let in had to be the people who would not push. He told Mia at coffee one afternoon, because Mia was that kind of friend. Warm enough to care, not close enough to dig. She had been thrilled for him the way a stylish older sister is thrilled. Surface questions only. "Are you keeping it? Are you okay? Do you need anything?" She did not ask about the father. Jay said something vague about it not being someone in the picture, and Mia nodded the way a friend who is also a busy person nods, careful but not pushing. They went on having coffee occasionally. Mia sent him photos of cute baby spoons. Months later, she texted him from a rooftop bar with a giddy string of exclamation points to say she had met someone. Jay sent her hearts. Months after that, she texted him again, this time with a photo of a ring on her hand and the caption, "Engagement party at the loft. You have to come. I am making my fiancé learn your cake order." Jay smiled at his phone the way you smile at someone else's good news when your own news is still secret. He said yes. He baked the cake himself. He did not ask the fiancé's name. There was no reason to. Now the fiancé's name was Jason, and the alpha was standing on the other side of the loft, refilling Mia's wine glass with a controlled hand, and Jay was holding the edge of a chair to stay upright. He told himself to leave. He could pick up his coat. He could text Mia tomorrow with an apology and a vague stomach thing. He could send the cake serving suggestions to her cousin and disappear from this party and figure out the rest later, in the dark, alone. The only place he had ever figured anything out. He did not leave. He stood there with one hand on the chair and one hand on his belly where his son was now kicking in slow rolling waves the way he kicked when he was settling in, and he watched Jason across the room. Jason was not looking at him. Jason was looking at Mia. He was nodding at something her cousin was saying. He was holding Mia's wine glass with the careful attention of a man who has just had a piece of information dropped into him from a great height and is trying to keep the surface of his life from rippling. Then he smelled the air. It was a small motion, the kind of thing an omega would catch and a beta would miss. A barely perceptible shift in how he held his head, a slight lift, nostrils opening a fraction. Jay knew what he was smelling. Jay knew because his obstetrician had told him. Pups carry the sire's pheromone markers through the 3rd trimester. Faint. But any alpha who has known the sire's scent at close range will recognize it. The doctor had said it in the casual professional tone of someone who had delivered the information to a lot of frightened omegas. If that is a concern for you, I should know. Jay had said it was not a concern. The doctor had nodded and moved on. The doctor had not known that the sire would be standing in a loft on a weekend evening with his hand around Jay's friend's wine glass, and his entire alpha body cataloging the air around an omega he had walked out on months earlier. Jason set the glass down on a side table. He said something to Mia that made her laugh. He moved casually in Jay's direction, the way a man moves through his own party when he is on his way to the bathroom or the bar or anywhere except the conversation he is actually walking toward. He stopped close to Jay's elbow without looking at him. "There is a hallway by the coat closet," Jason said. His voice was low. He was looking at his own hand on the side table. "I am going to be in it in 5 minutes. You do not have to come." He walked past Jay and into the kitchen, where someone immediately handed him a tray and a pair of tongs and asked him to be useful. Jay stood there for what felt like a long time and might have been only a few seconds. He looked at Mia across the loft, holding court near the window now, her arm around her cousin. Her face lit up the way it had been lit up all evening because this was her party, and she was happy. And she had no idea. His chest hurt in a way he did not have words for. Not the panic he had been bracing for since the handshake. Something quieter. Closer to grief. He went into the hallway. It was dark. The coat closet sat in the bend between the entry and the back bedrooms, a narrow run of paneling with a few framed prints and a small bench. Someone had stacked extra coats on the bench. Jay leaned against the wall opposite the closet and put both hands on his belly and tried to remember how to breathe like a person. Jason came around the corner a few minutes later. He stopped at the head of the hallway and looked at Jay and did not move closer. He stood in the soft light with his arms at his sides, and the sound of the party muffled through the wall behind him, and a face that, for the first time since the handshake, was no longer arranged for company. "Is it mine?" His voice came out controlled. The control of a man holding a glass full to the brim and concentrating on not spilling. Jay had practiced this conversation. In the shower, in the car, walking home from work. Answers for the alpha who pretended not to know him, and answers for the alpha who pretended he had known all along, and answers for every variation in between. None of them came out. What came out was, yes. Jason closed his eyes. He kept them closed for a long time. Jay watched the muscle in his jaw work once, the only place his composure had cracked. Then the alpha opened his eyes and looked at Jay's belly and looked back at his face. And the question that came next was the question Jay had not prepared for. "Why didn't you tell me?" It was not an accusation. It was not even angry. It was a man asking a question he genuinely needed the answer to, and Jay realized with a small sick lurch that he had spent 8 months getting ready to defend himself, and the defense did not work against this. "You said you were not built for it," he said. "When?" "In my doorway. The morning you ended it. You said you were sorry you were the way you were about this. I believed you." Jason's mouth opened slightly. He looked away from Jay and at the floor between them. "I meant the relationship," he said. "I know. I did not mean." "I know." The hallway was very quiet. Mia's laugh came through the wall, bright and far away, and Jay watched the alpha he had once slept with for months process the fact that he had a son growing inside the omega in front of him, and that the omega had decided he was the kind of man who would not want to know. "Jay," Jason said, "don't." "I am not." "Don't say my name like that." "Not here. Not with her in the next room." Jason looked up. He had a face that gave very little away in good lighting and almost nothing in bad. But Jay could see, in the muscle around his mouth, that the alpha was holding something with both hands, and the something was heavy. "What do you need from me?" Jason said. "Nothing." "That is not an answer. It is the only answer I have." "Jason, I came here to bring a cake. Mia invited me and I had no idea you were the fiancé. I did not come here to do this to her or to you or to him." His hand pressed flat against his belly. The pup was kicking again, low and rolling, and Jay's eyes burned in a way he could not afford. "I have a plan. I have had one for 8 months. The plan does not have you in it. It does not have to have you in it. So please, go back to your party. Marry her. Be the kind of man you decided to be after me. I will not be the Omega who blew up your life." Jason looked at him for a long moment. "He's a boy," he said quietly. It was not a question. Jay nodded anyway. "And he carries my scent." "Yes." The alpha lifted one hand toward Jay's belly and stopped halfway, as though he had remembered between the impulse and the gesture that he did not have the right. He let it fall. "I cannot pretend I did not feel that. You can. You did, 10 minutes ago, when you said nice to meet you. You can do it again. That was different. It was the same. That was for her." Jason's voice cracked on the last word. The crack was small. Jay heard it like glass. "Jay, that was for Mia. I would not pretend in this hallway. Not now. Not with you." The party noise rose and fell through the wall. Someone put on music. Mia's voice carried, calling for Jason, asking where the corkscrew was. Jason's whole body did a small thing in response to her voice, a tightening that was not anger and was not even guilt exactly. It was the look of a man whose loyalty had not yet decided where to live. "Go," Jay said. "I need to talk to you." "Not here." "Where?" Jay closed his eyes. He thought about the bakery. He thought about his apartment. He thought about every public space in this city he had ever been to with this alpha, and every one he had not. The coffee shop on a side street near the bakery surfaced, the one with the green awning where the owner did not know Jay, and did not know Mia, and would not know to look for a story in 2 men sitting across from each other in the middle of an afternoon. He gave Jason the name. He gave him a day. He said, "If you do not come, I will not chase you. If you come for him. Not for me. Not to ease whatever this just put in your chest. For him." "Okay. Now go back to your fiancé." Jason looked at him for one more second. Then he turned and went back into the party, and Jay stood in the hallway with his hand on his son and let himself shake for the first time since he had walked through the door. He did not stay long. He found Mia in the kitchen, kissed her on the cheek, said something vague about pregnancy fatigue, accepted her hug, accepted her cousin's hug, accepted a slice of his own cake wrapped in a napkin to take home. He did not look at Jason on the way out. Jason did not look at him. In the elevator down, Jay pressed his forehead to the cold steel of the wall and tried to remember how to breathe like a person whose careful life had not just been opened up by a handshake. The coffee shop on the side street had a green awning and a chalkboard menu, and a woman behind the counter who did not look up when Jay walked in. He had picked it for that. He had picked it because the windows were small and the booths were tucked into corners, and because the woman behind the counter cared more about her crossword than about anyone else's afternoon. He was early. He always was. He sat in the back booth with his hands wrapped around a decaf he was not going to drink and watched the door. Jason came in not long after. He had dressed down, a dark sweater, jeans, no coat against the cold because he was the kind of alpha who did not feel weather. He scanned the room once, found Jay, and walked over without performance. He sat down across from him. He did not order anything. "How are you?" he said. Jay looked at him. "That is the first thing you ask." "Yes." Not how far along, not what is the plan, not what do I need to do. Just how are you? "Yes." Jay did not have a script for this either. He had spent the week getting ready for an alpha who was going to come in with terms, offers, the kind of practical negotiation he had braced himself for in every quiet conversation he had had with himself since the test. He had not braced himself for, "How are you?" "I'm tired," he said. I am pregnant. I am angry at you for the wrong reasons, and I know it, and I cannot stop. I have not slept through the night since Saturday. I keep thinking about your hand on my stomach and the look on her face, and I cannot decide if I am angry that you didn't recognize me on sight or angry that you did. Jason did not respond to that immediately. He took it. He sat with it. I recognized you on sight, the Alpha said. I had a half-second. Maybe less. I made a choice. The choice was wrong. I am not going to pretend I made the choice for you, or for the pup, or for any reason except that I was standing next to her and I was a coward. Okay. That is the answer to the question you didn't ask. Okay. What else? Jay drew a slow breath. The booth was warm. The shop smelled of coffee, and the cinnamon bun the woman at the counter was warming for someone, and the radio was playing something so soft it was almost not music. He had imagined this conversation as a confrontation. It was not. It was two adults trying to find a way to sit across from each other in a room. He is due in late spring, Jay said. He is a boy. He is healthy. The obstetrician is at the practice off the highway. You do not need to know which one. I am not asking you to come to appointments. I have savings. The bakery is going to give me leave. I have a plan. I believe you. I do not need you to fix anything. I know. Then why are you here? Jason looked at him across the table. He looked at him the way he had looked at him over toast the morning he ended it, with a clear-eyed assessment that had nothing soft in it. The juniper of his scent was muted, deliberate, the Alpha keeping it tucked in. Jay's Omega instincts read the restraint as care, and he hated, a little, that he could not help reading it that way. Because I have a son, Jason said. Whether I am useful to you or not, whether you want me here or not, whether your plan includes me or not. I have a son, and I do not know yet what I am going to be to him, but I am going to be something. I am not going to be the man who paid for things by mail. Mia. The word hung between them. Jason's hand on the table went still. I know. You are engaged to her. I know. You came here, to this coffee shop, to meet me, to talk about a son she does not know exists. Do you understand what that is? Yes. Then what are you doing, Jason? He looked down at his hand on the table. He turned it palm up, then closed it slowly into a fist, then let it open again. It was the most fidgeting Jay had ever seen out of him. I have not decided, he said. I owe her the truth. I am going to tell her. I have not yet because I am trying to figure out how. I am not asking you to wait for me to figure it out. I am not asking you for anything. I came here because you said, come for him, and I came for him. The bell over the door rang. A man in a heavy coat walked in, ordered a black coffee, took it to a table in the front. He did not look at them. Jay's hands had stopped trembling at some point during the conversation. He did not remember when. All right, he said. All right. What do you want to know? Jason started small. He asked about the pregnancy, about the weight Jay had lost in the first trimester and the weight he had put back on since, about the obstetrician without asking her name, about the bakery, about the leave plan, about the lease on the apartment, about whether Jay had thought about a name. Jay answered the ones he could answer. He did not answer the ones he did not want to. Jason did not push. When Jay said he was tired and he should go, Jason stood up first. He walked him to the door. He stood in the cold air outside the coffee shop with his hands in his pockets and the juniper of his scent diffusing into the dry afternoon, and he said, "Can I see you again?" To talk. Yes. When? Jay told him a day. Jason nodded. He did not touch Jay. He did not reach for his belly. He did not do any of the things Jay had been bracing for, and the not doing was, in a way he did not want to examine, what made him want to cry on the walk back to his car. They met again the next week, and the week after, always the coffee shop, always in the afternoons when the bakery was slow and Jason could carve out an hour without anyone in his life needing to know where he was. They sat in the back booth. Jason brought a small notebook the second week, and Jay watched the alpha take notes on prenatal vitamins and contraction timing with the same focused efficiency he had probably brought to his first hotel acquisition. Jay teased him about it once, gently, and Jason looked up from the notebook and said, "I have never done this. I am not going to fake it." Jay had to look down at his decaf for a long minute after that. Jason learned things in those afternoons that nobody else knew. That Jay had not told his mother, that Jay had a small list, written in pencil on the inside cover of the prenatal notebook, of names he was considering for the pup, and that he had been writing names on it for months and crossing them off the next day. That Jay's apartment had one bedroom, and that Jay had given the bedroom to the nursery and was sleeping on a daybed in the living room because he did not want his son to be the one who slept in the smaller room. That Jay had not bought a stroller yet because every model he looked at was either too expensive or too cheap, and he could not get himself to commit. Jay learned things too. That Jason's father had walked out when Jason was a child. That Jason had grown up watching his mother work a second job, and his older half-brother Ryan become the man of the house before his voice had finished changing. That Jason had spent his 20s building a hotel renovation firm with Ryan, partly because the work was good, and partly because it was the only way to make sure he and his brother stayed in the same room long enough to count as a family. That Jason had decided, somewhere in his late 20s, that he was going to be the kind of man who stayed, and that he had thought meeting Mia and proposing to her was the proof he had been waiting for. Jay did not push back on any of it. He let Jason talk. He noticed that Jason talked more in the back booth of that coffee shop than he had in the entire months they had been seeing each other casually, and he did not know what to do with that information. The afternoons were not romantic. They were not anything like the months they had spent together a year earlier, when there had been a hand on his neck under the table and a foot pressed against his. In the booth and all the careful electric distance Jay remembered from the bar where they had first met. But there were small moments. One afternoon, Jason reached across the table to wipe a smudge of flour off Jay's cheek, and his thumb stayed against Jay's skin for half a second longer than the gesture required, and Jay's omega instincts answered with a quick, warm shift in his scent that the alpha had to have caught. He pulled his hand back and did not apologize, which was somehow worse. Another afternoon, Jay set his hand on the table and Jason set his next to it, not touching, just within reach, and they sat like that for a long minute while Jay talked about the bakery and Jason listened. Once, on a bad day when Jay's back was killing him and the pup had been kicking him in the kidneys for an hour, Jason came around to his side of the booth, pressed the heel of his palm against the place on Jay's lower spine that always ached, and held it there until the pain eased. Neither of them looked at each other for the whole time it lasted. Jay went home from those meetings and lay in the daybed in his living room and stared at the ceiling and tried to figure out what he was doing. He was not in love with Jason. He had never been in love with Jason. The thing they had had a year ago had been good and clean and physical and exactly what both of them had said it was. He was not, he kept saying inside his own head, building anything new with this alpha. He was letting a father get to know his unborn son. He was being practical. He was being decent. He was not going to punish Jason for the version of himself who had walked out a doorway, when the version sitting in the booth now was clearly a different man. But there were nights when he could not sleep. There were nights when his hand ended up on his belly, and his other hand ended up touching the place on his cheek where Jason's thumb had been, and the burnt butter of his scent went round in a way it had not gone round for anyone else since the night they met, and he had to remind himself, out loud sometimes, that this was not what this was. This was not what this was. This was a man who had a fiancé at home who did not know what was happening, and Jay was not the omega who blew up someone else's life. He was going to keep being decent. He was going to keep meeting Jason in the back booth, and when his son was born, Jason was going to figure out what kind of father he wanted to be, and Jay was going to figure out how to let him be one, and the two of them were going to be the kind of co-parents who managed their thing through text messages and pickup schedules. There was going to be nothing more than that. He almost believed it. The week it broke open was a week Jay would remember afterward in pieces, like the days around a death. Mia texted him one morning to ask if he wanted to come to a tasting at the loft. He said yes because saying no would have been the suspicious thing. Jason's face when Jay walked through the door, the small, careful arrangement of it, the way the alpha looked at his fiancé and then at Jay and then at the floor. Mia poured everyone wine and forgot Jay was not drinking and remembered halfway through pouring his glass and laughed at herself and refilled it with sparkling water and apologized so sweetly that Jay had to turn his face toward the window for a minute. Mia talking about flower arrangements and venues and the trip to Mexico she and Jason were going to take in the fall. Jason nodding in the right places. The entire dinner unfolding like a perfect small play that everyone in the room was performing in a different language. Jason walked him to the elevator at the end of the evening, the way a host walks any guest, and the elevator doors closed between them, with the juniper of his scent still hanging in the hallway, and Jay's heart going so fast he had to sit on the floor of the elevator on the ride down. The text came that night, from Jason, late. I am going to tell her this week, not because of tonight, because I cannot keep being two men. I am not asking you for anything, I just wanted you to know. Jay stared at the text for a long time. He typed 3 different answers. He deleted all of them. In the end, he sent back 2 words. Tell the truth. He did not sleep that night. He did not sleep the next night. He went to the bakery in the mornings and decorated cakes for other people's weddings with hands that did not tremble because his hands could not tremble. That was the job. And he went home in the evenings and sat on the daybed and waited for the world to change. It changed one afternoon, in the bakery, hours before closing, when the bell over the front door rang and a man Jay had never met walked in and asked very politely if he could have a moment of Jay's time. He was tall. He had Jason's shoulders and a face that was harder, more set, the lines around his mouth carved in by years of not laughing. He was wearing a dark coat and gloves he did not take off. His scent was almost nothing. The muted background warmth of a beta, and the mutedness was its own kind of statement. He looked, in the gentle yellow light of Jay's bakery, like a man who had come to deliver something he had practiced in the mirror. You must be Jay, he said. Yes, I am Ryan, Jason's brother. Jay set down the piping bag he was holding. He went to the small consultation table at the front of the bakery, the one where he sat with brides and grooms and walked them through flavor flights, and he sat down across from Ryan with his hands folded on the table. He didn't send you, Jay said. No. He doesn't know you're here. No. All right. Ryan looked at him for a long moment. There was no hostility in his face. There was something almost worse than hostility. A kind of careful, measured pity. The look of a man who had decided in advance to be reasonable. He is going to tell her tomorrow, Ryan said. I asked him to wait. He is not waiting. So I am here to ask you something instead. Okay. I am going to tell you some things, and then I am going to ask. Is that all right? Go ahead. He took off his gloves. He set them on the table. He laid his hands flat on the wood and looked at them for a second before he started. My father left when Jason was a kid. I was a little older. My mother. He stopped, started again. My mother kept going to work, but she was not the same person. The person who lived in our house afterward was somebody we took care of. Jason took care of her in ways I could not. He read to her. He cooked the things she liked. I handled the bills. Jay said nothing. My brother has spent his whole life deciding he is not going to be our father. The engagement to Mia is the first thing he has chosen for himself that was not a reaction to that. I watched him come home the night he proposed. He was happy. I have not seen him happy like that. Not really, since we were children. He looked at his hands on the table. He had not looked up yet. Jay watched the muscle in the side of his throat work. I am asking you, he said. Not threatening. I do not want to be the man threatening you in your own bakery. I am asking, let him be the man he is becoming. He can support the child. He can know him. He does not have to be inside your life to be a father to him. Please let him have what he was building before you walked back into it." The bakery was very quiet. The afternoon light came in slantwise through the front window and lit the dust above the consultation table. Jay's hand was on his belly. The pup was kicking, the slow rolling kicks he did when he was settling. Jay looked at Ryan. He looked at the gloves on the table. He could see, in the set of Ryan's shoulders and the careful way he had folded his hands, that this man had practiced this conversation in his car before he came in. He could see that Ryan loved his brother. He could see that he had no idea how to bend. "He chose to come to me," Jay said quietly. "I did not chase him into that hallway. I did not chase him into the coffee shop. He came. He has been coming every week. I have not asked him for anything. I have not asked him to leave her. I have not asked him to choose. He came on his own. Because he is a decent man. Yes, that does not make him available. I know that. Then please, help him stay." Jay was quiet for a long time. He could feel the edge of the consultation table under his palms. He could feel his son moving under his other hand. He could feel the years he had spent learning how to ask for nothing, and the past months he had spent letting another person sit across from him in a back booth, and the small, terrible truth that he had been letting himself enjoy the company. "I am not going to ask him to do anything," he said. "I have never asked him to do anything. If he tells her, he tells her because he cannot live with not telling her. That is not my doing. That is his. And if you are angry about it, Ryan, you are angry at the wrong person." "I am not angry at you. You came here. I came here because I love him, and I am out of better options." Jay looked at him. He felt for one bright second something close to sympathy. Then he felt his son kick again and remembered who he was sitting in this bakery for. "Please leave," he said. "I will not tell him you came. But please go." Ryan stood. He put his gloves on slowly. He looked around the bakery, at the cakes in the display case, and the small framed photos on the wall of weddings Jay had done, and his face did something almost soft, just for a moment, before it set again. "He is going to lose her," Ryan said, "and he is going to lose the version of himself he wanted to be. I hope you know what you are doing." "I am having a baby," Jay said. "I am not doing anything else." Ryan left. The bell rang. The door closed. Jay sat at the consultation table for a long time, and when he finally stood up, his back ached and his hand was cramped on his belly and his face was wet in a way he had not given himself permission to notice while Ryan was in the room. He closed the bakery early. He drove home. He went to bed in the daybed in the living room and did not turn the lamp on. The next morning, before the bakery opened, his phone lit up on the bedside crate. It was from Mia. "I know. I do not blame you. I need some time." Jay sat on the edge of the daybed and read it. He read it again. He read it a third time. He looked at the timestamp. He thought about Jason driving home from wherever he had told her, and Mia sitting alone in the loft with the ring she must have taken off, and the kitchen counter where she would have set it down. He knew her. He knew she would have set it down carefully, somewhere it would not get lost, even in the worst moment of her year. He pressed his face into his hands. He sat that way for a long time. When he stood up, his back was stiff, and there was a tight, low pain in his belly that he had been having on and off all week and had been telling himself was nothing. He went into the bathroom and washed his face and looked at himself in the mirror, and the man looking back at him was a stranger he had spent 8 months becoming. He had told himself, the night he decided not to text Jason, that he was not going to be the Omega who ambushed an alpha into fatherhood. He had told himself every week in the back booth of the coffee shop that he was not the Omega who blew up someone else's life. He had been careful. He had been decent. He had not asked for anything. The thing he had not asked for had happened anyway. He stood in the bathroom with his hand on his belly and the tight pain low in his pelvis getting tighter, not loosening, and he understood. In the cold, pale light of a bathroom he had cleaned the night before, that the careful, invisible life he had been building for almost a year was over. He was not going back to the daybed in the living room. He was not going back to the back booth in the coffee shop. He was not going back to anything that had been true the day before. His son was coming. The pain was not the practice pain he had felt all week. It was lower. It was tighter. It was the pain the books had described. He stood there with his hand on his belly and his phone on the edge of the sink and the morning sun coming in through the high, small window, and the next decision he had to make was already in front of him. He picked up the phone. The end of part 1. He called Jason. The phone rang once. The Alpha picked up before the second ring, his voice sleep rough at the other end, and Jay realized with the part of his brain that was still observing things from a distance that Jason had probably not slept much either. Jay. It is starting. Where are you? Home, bathroom. The pains are coming closer together. I am 10 minutes out. I will be there. Do not drive yourself. I was not going to. Good. Jason hung up. Jay sat down on the closed lid of the toilet and put his hand on his belly and looked at the small bag he had packed weeks ago and left by the door because the book said to have it ready. The pain came again. It was lower and tighter than the last one, and he understood that this was no longer a thing he could decide whether to do. Jason got there in less than 10 minutes. Jay heard the car before he heard the buzzer. He had not given Jason a key. The Alpha had not asked for one. Jay had buzzed him up the few times he had come over to drop off the humidifier the doctor had recommended, the prenatal tea. The small concrete acts of presence that had become, over the past weeks, the only physical evidence Jay had that any of this was real outside the back booth of the coffee shop. Jason came through the door already moving. He went straight to Jay in the bathroom, knelt down in front of him, put one hand on Jay's knee and one hand on the bag by the door without taking his eyes off Jay's face. How close? A few minutes apart, maybe less. Coat. Hanging by the door. He got the coat. He got the bag. He got Jay up off the toilet lid with one arm and walked him to the elevator like a man who had been preparing for this for weeks and had no intention of dropping the thing he was carrying. In the elevator down, Jay leaned against the wall and Jason stood next to him and did not touch him except to lift his hand toward Jay's lower back when the next pain came, and the heel of his palm pressed into the place that always ached, and Jay made a sound he did not mean to make, and Jason did not comment on it. The car was warm. He had remembered to warm it. Jay realized this with the same part of his brain that was still cataloging things. The same part that had noticed Jason's hair was wet from a shower he had clearly taken in a hurry, and that there was a small spot of toothpaste at the corner of his mouth that he had missed, and that the Alpha was, despite all of this, the most controlled person in the car. Hospital. Yes. Which one? Jay told him. Jason nodded and pulled out of the lot and drove with the easy attention of a man who was not going to break any rules but was not going to waste any seconds either. Jay sat in the passenger seat with his hand on his belly and watched the city slide past the window and tried to count the gap between pains because the doctor had said to count. 6 minutes apart, he said after a while. You called me at 4-something. Maybe 7 minutes apart. All right. Jason. Yes. Mia. He felt the Alpha tense in the driver's seat next to him. Not visibly. Internally. The juniper of his scent did a small thing. She knows I am here. You told her. I told her this morning. After her text to you. I knew where you were going to call from before you called. How? Because the doctor told us both at the appointment last week that the pup was sitting low. Because Ryan told me he came to see you. Because I have been awake since 2 a.m. waiting for the phone to go. Jay looked at him across the dark interior of the car. The streetlights washed across Jason's face in slow yellow bars and made his eyes harder to read. You knew Ryan came. He told me. He came to my apartment last night and told me what he did. He cried, Jay. My brother does not cry. He cried and he asked me to forgive him for going behind my back, and I told him I needed time, and then I sat up the rest of the night and thought about my father. The pain came again, sharper this time. Jay clenched his fist against the door handle and breathed through it the way the books had said, and did not say anything for a long minute. When the pain eased, he said, What about your father? I have spent my entire adult life deciding I was not going to be him. I have been so sure that staying meant marrying the right person and building a firm and never raising my voice. I have been so sure that staying was something you proved with paperwork. Then you walked into my fiancé's loft with my son inside you, and I realized I had been measuring staying by the wrong thing the whole time. Jay did not answer. I am not telling you this to ask you for anything, Jason said. I am telling you because you asked. Okay. They reached the hospital. Jason pulled up to the obstetric entrance, came around to Jay's side, opened the door, got him out, walked him to the desk. He answered the desk attendant's questions when Jay did not have the breath to. He produced an insurance card Jay had not known he was carrying. He filled out the paperwork with a pen he had brought from his own coat pocket. The desk attendant looked between them once and said, "Father?" And Jason said, "Yes," without looking at Jay. The nurse who came to take Jay back was an older Omega with gray at her temples and a face that had clearly seen every version of this scene a hospital could produce. She looked at Jason. She looked at Jay. She said, "Honey, you want him with you?" Jay said yes. He did not look at Jason when he said it. The room was small and warm and lit at the dim setting they used at night. The nurse helped Jay into the gown. She got the monitors on. She walked him through the dilation check the doctor would do when she came. She told them the pup was head down and engaged, which was good, and that Jay was further along in the labor than he had thought, which meant the next few hours were going to move faster than the books had warned him about. Jason sat in the chair next to the bed. He did not reach for Jay's hand. He waited. When Jay reached for his, the alpha took it without comment and folded his other hand over the top of it and held it there. The doctor came. The doctor was the same obstetrician Jay had been seeing the whole pregnancy, the one who had told him about the pheromone markers, and she walked into the room and looked at Jason and looked at Jay and said, "Well, this is the rest of the story, I take it." Jay laughed, and the laugh turned into a hiss of pain, and the doctor moved over to the foot of the bed and began the work she was there to do. The labor was long, not as long as the books warned. Long enough. Jason did not leave. He did not perform. He did not ask Jay if he was okay every 5 minutes because he had learned somewhere in the past weeks that Jay did not want to be asked. He stayed in the chair. He fetched ice chips when the nurse said ice chips were allowed. He put his hand on Jay's lower back when the contraction stacked, and he did not move it until the pain eased. When Jay swore at him, which happened twice, Jason said nothing. When Jay apologized for swearing at him, which happened immediately after, Jason said, "Do not apologize," and the word landed harder than any apology Jay had ever received. Late in the night, when the contractions were less than a minute apart and Jay's body was doing the work it was built for in spite of every part of his brain that was trying to fight it, the doctor said it was time. Jay pushed for a long time. He pushed until his throat was raw from the sounds his body made without his permission. He pushed until the room narrowed to a single point of pressure, and the only thing keeping him oriented was Jason's hand under his and Jason's voice saying his name, low and even, on every breath. His son was born just before dawn. The doctor lifted him. The room filled with the small, ragged, indignant sound of a baby drawing his first breath and deciding he did not approve of any of it. Jay closed his eyes. He felt the warmth of the body placed on his chest. He felt Jason go still beside him. He opened his eyes and looked at his son. The pup was small and wet and red-faced. His eyes were closed. His tiny fists were clenched against the world, and his scent, even through the new baby smell of blood and skin and the antiseptic of the room, came through in 2 clear notes. Burnt butter, faint and round, the omega base he had inherited from Jay. And under it, surfacing already, a thin, sharp line of wet juniper. The pup's alpha markers had been there in Jay's belly all along. Now they were here in the open, the new air finding them and lifting them, his son's body broadcasting its parentage on its first breath. Jason made a sound Jay had never heard out of him. It was not a word. It was the sound a person makes when something inside their chest gives way at a structural level. Jay turned his head toward him. The alpha was leaning forward in the chair, one hand still wrapped around Jay's, the other hovering just above the pup's tiny back, not yet giving himself permission to touch. "You can," Jay said. His voice was wrecked. "Go ahead." Jason laid his palm flat against the pup's back. The pup, against all logic, calmed. The crying did not stop, but it softened, the small body recognizing a parent who smelled right, and Jay felt the room go very quiet around the three of them for a long second. The nurses moved in to clean the pup and check his weight. Jason sat back in the chair. He pressed his hand to his face. Jay watched his shoulders shake, just once, and then settle. The alpha did not make another sound. He stayed in the chair beside the bed while the work of the room went on around him, and when the pup was placed back on Jay's chest in a clean blanket, Jason leaned forward again and said very quietly, "Hi." That was it. Hi. The first word he said to his son. Jay had not known until that moment that he was going to cry. He cried with the pup on his chest and Jason's hand on the pup's back and the doctor doing the last necessary things at the foot of the bed. And the nurse, who had checked them in earlier, came back to take the pup briefly and looked at Jay and said, in a tone that made Jay understand she had said it to a lot of new parents, "You did good, honey." He had done good. He had done it. He had not done it alone. He did not know yet whether that was a relief or a fact he was going to have to learn how to carry. They moved him to a recovery room a couple of hours later. The pup slept in a small bassinet by the bed, swaddled, his tiny mouth working in his sleep at nothing in particular. Jason stood at the foot of the bassinet for a long time, his hands clasped behind his back, watching his son breathe. He had not asked to hold him yet. Jay understood that he was waiting to be invited. "You can pick him up," Jay said. His voice was hoarse. "If you wash your hands." Jason washed his hands at the small sink. He came back. He lifted the pup the way the nurses had shown him, supporting the head, drawing the small body in against his chest, and stood by the window where the early morning light was beginning to come up over the city. Jay watched them from the bed. He had spent 8 months bracing for the version of this scene where Jason was not in it. He had spent the last weeks bracing for the version where Jason was, but was uncertain, was halfway, an in-and-out father. He had not braced for the version where Jason stood at a hospital window in the first light of morning, holding their son like the pup was the only thing in the room he had ever needed to be careful about. The alpha turned his head slightly. He met Jay's eyes across the room. "He is so small," Jason said. "He is going to get bigger." "I know. You can sit down. You do not have to keep holding him standing up." Jason sat down in the chair next to the bed, the pup against his chest, and Jay watched him close his eyes for a long minute and just breathe his son in. "Jason." "Yes. I need to say something." He opened his eyes. "All right." Jay drew a breath. The hospital pillow was hard under his head. His body hurt in places he had not known a body could hurt. The pup was asleep on the alpha's chest with one tiny fist curled against the fabric of Jason's sweater, and the room smelled of antiseptic and burnt butter and juniper. The third scent the combination made, the bakery kitchen smell with the back door open onto a winter morning. "I am not promising you anything," Jay said. "I am not promising you a relationship. I am not promising you that you and I are going to be a thing. I do not know what I am promising you yet." "I know. But you can be his father. Not from a distance. Here. The way you have been the past weeks, but more. The way you are right now." Jason looked down at the pup on his chest. "I will not be the kind of father who pays for things by mail," he said quietly. "I know. I told her that this morning, when I left her loft. I told her I was not asking her to take me back. I was telling her I was going to be a father, and that meant I was going to be a man who showed up, and that the version of me she met was a version that did not exist anymore." "What did she say?" He was quiet for a long second. She said she had known something was different since the party. She had not let herself think the thought. When I told her, she said she was not going to fight for a man who had not even known he was a father. She said she deserved someone who knew his own life. And then she asked me one question. What? She asked if I had loved her at all. I said I had tried. I said I had wanted to. She said, "That is not the same thing, Jason." And she handed me my coat. Jay looked at the Alpha across the dim room, the pup on his chest, the gray morning light at the window. Jason was not crying. He had passed through the part of the night where crying happened. He was sitting in a chair holding his son and telling the truth about a conversation that had been the worst conversation of his life, and his juniper scent was muted and clean and steady in the air. "I am sorry," Jay said. "Do not be sorry. You did not do this." "I know I did not. I am still sorry." "All right." The pup made a small sound in his sleep. Jason adjusted the blanket around him. "What did you name him?" he asked. Jay looked at the bassinet. Then he looked at the small notebook he had brought in his bag, the one with the names list in the back. He had crossed out every name on the list at one point or another. None of them had felt like his son's name. He had decided, somewhere in the 3rd trimester, that he was going to wait and see his son's face, and then he would know. He had seen his son's face. He knew. "I have not picked one yet," he said. "I had a list. None of them felt right. Do you want me to?" "To what?" "Help." Jay looked at the Alpha and his son. He thought about how strange this was, that the man he had thought wouldn't be in this room was sitting in it, that the conversation he had thought would happen by text was happening face to face, that the name of his child was about to be a thing. 2 people decided together instead of a thing he picked alone on the daybed in his living room. "All right," he said. Jason looked down at the pup. He looked at him for a long time. Then he said, "He looks like his other father." Jay laughed. It hurt. He did not stop. "He does not look like me yet," he said. "He looks like a raisin. He is going to look like both of us eventually. That is how it works." "I know how it works." "Do you have a name?" Jason thought. He shifted the pup gently against his chest. He looked out the window at the morning coming up over the city, the gray light shifting toward gold at the edges, the kind of light that came in late spring when the snow up in the foothills was beginning to give way and the air had the first cleanness of warmer weather in it. "You first," he said. "Tell me one you almost picked." Jay thought. He thought about the small list in pencil in the back of his notebook. He thought about the name he had written down and crossed out the most times, the one he had kept coming back to and rejecting because it had felt too much like a wish. He said it. Jason was quiet for a long second. Then he nodded. "Yes. Yes. That is his name." The pup, who had been asleep, opened one eye briefly, looked at neither of them, and went back to sleep. As though he had heard it. As though he had been waiting to check. Jay watched it happen and felt something warm rise in his chest that he did not have words for and was not going to try to name. They sat in the room until the morning was fully up. Jason did not put the pup down. Jay did not ask him to. At some point, a nurse came in and took the pup's vitals and gave them a sheet of paper with feeding instructions and left again. At some point, Jay slept. When he woke, Jason was still in the chair, the pup still on his chest, and the Alpha was watching the bassinet like he was memorizing it. "Have you slept?" Jay asked. "No." "You should." "I will." "At your apartment." He looked at Jay. "I know. I am not saying you have to leave the hospital. I am saying when you do leave, you go to your apartment, not to mine. We do not get to skip steps because of this. All right? I am not punishing you. I know. I am protecting him. And me, and probably you. I know, Jay." He looked at the Alpha for a long second. He nodded. "Okay. Okay." Mia came to see Jay later that day. She came alone. She came carrying a small bouquet of flowers from a corner shop, something to hold in her hands at the door. She knocked on the open frame of the room and stood there until Jay looked up. Her face did the work of arranging itself the way Jason's face had arranged itself across the loft on the night of the party. And Jay knew, watching her do it, what the past week had cost her. Jason was not in the room. He had left a couple of hours earlier to go home and shower and to do whatever the alpha needed to do to keep being upright. And the timing of Mia's visit was so clean that Jay understood, without anyone telling him, that Jason had texted her. "Hi," Mia said. "Hi. Can I come in?" Yes, she came in. She set the bouquet on the small side table. She did not look at the bassinet. She sat down in the chair Jason had been sitting in, and she folded her hands in her lap and looked at Jay's face for a long second without saying anything. "I have been trying to figure out what to say to you," she said finally. "On the drive over, I had a whole thing." "Okay. I forgot it as soon as I sat down." Jay said nothing. He waited. "I am not here to forgive you. I do not know if I can yet." She looked at her hands in her lap, then up at him. "I am also not here to be angry. I think I will be angry later. I keep waiting for it, and it has not come. Mostly I have been tired. Mia, let me get through this." "Okay." She took a breath. She lost it. She tried again. "You did not do this to me." "Okay. I want you to hear me say that because I think you have been telling yourself you did. He did not do this to me either. We were all just." She stopped. Her hand moved in a small, useless circle. "I do not have a clean way to say it. The three of us were in a room and none of us could see each other. He could not see me because he did not know what he had already done. I could not see you because I did not know what you were. You could not see me because you did not know who I was getting married to." "I am sorry." "I know. I should have told you, in the hallway, after. I should have." "Yes. I have been a coward." "Maybe." She looked away. Her jaw worked once. "I do not know yet, Jay. I do not know if you were a coward or if you were a person who did not want to detonate a stranger's life on a Saturday night. I keep going back and forth. I have decided I am not going to make that decision today." He nodded. "I do not know what kind of friends we can be," she said. "I do not know if we can go back to coffee. See, I do not think we can soon. I came here because if I did not come now, I was never going to. And I did not want our last conversation to be the one where you handed me a cake." "All right." "I am not going to see him." She glanced once at the bassinet without quite looking. "Today. I might want to someday. Not today." "I understand." She stood. She picked up her coat. She held it in front of her like a thing she had forgotten how to put on. She looked at him from the door. "Take care of him," she said. "Take care of yourself." "I will." "I know." She left. Jay sat in the bed for a long time after she left. He looked at the flowers on the side table. He looked at the bassinet. He looked at the small framed certificate the hospital had printed with his son's measurements and a stamped tiny footprint and the name they had given the nurse a few hours ago when the paperwork came around. He cried, finally, the way he had not cried at any other point, not loudly, not with theater, just a long, quiet letting down of something that had been held too long. Jason came back in the afternoon. He had showered and slept and changed clothes. He brought a bag with a few things in it, Jay's phone charger from the apartment, a pair of warmer socks because the hospital was cold, a small, soft hat for the pup that he had apparently bought somewhere on his way back. He did not announce any of it. He set it on the side table next to Mia's flowers and sat down in the chair. "She came," he said. "You knew she was coming." "I asked her if she wanted to. I did not ask her to." "Okay. Was it?" "It was hard. It was the right thing. It was hard." "Okay." They sat for a while. Jason held the pup. Jay watched them. The doctor came through to do an evening check and pronounced everything well, and the nurse came through to take vitals. And the world resumed its small institutional rhythms around the two men in the room, and the small sun between them. When the lights dimmed for the night, Jay said, "What did you do after Mia gave you back the ring?" Jason looked at him. "I went home. I sat in my apartment. I called Ryan and we had the worst conversation of our lives. I sat up. I waited for your call. That is what I thought. Why? Because that is what I would have done." Jason did not respond. He looked down at the pup. He adjusted the blanket. He said very quietly, "I am going to make mistakes, Jay. I am going to be the wrong kind of present some weeks. I have never done this. I am going to fail at it in ways I cannot predict. I do not know what I am promising you. I know what I am promising him." "What are you promising him?" "That I am going to be here." "What does here mean?" "In his life. Whatever shape that is. I do not need to be in your apartment. I do not need to be the man you are with. I need to be in the room when he learns to walk, at the door when he comes home from school, reading to him before he can read." He paused. "That is what I am promising him." "All right. And to you." He looked up at Jay. His face was tired. The juniper of his scent was tired with him, lower and warmer than it usually sat, grounded toward something like a stone that had been in the sun all day. "To you, I am promising I am going to keep showing up. Not for credit. Not for anything. You are not going to do this alone whether or not you ever decide you want me." He stopped. He looked at the pup on his chest. "And if you decide you never want me, that promise still holds." He did not say anything else. Jay watched him not say it. Jay looked at him for a long second. "Jason." "Yes." "Come here." The alpha stood up. He came to the edge of the bed. He sat down on the edge of the mattress carefully, the pup still on his chest, and Jay reached up and placed his hand on the side of Jason's face. The alpha's eyes closed. Jay did not kiss him. He kept his hand on the alpha's cheek for a long second. His thumb moved once, against the place under Jason's eye where the alpha had not shaved that morning, because there had been no time. The soft, rough skin, warm under Jay's palm. And the third scent in the room, the bakery with the door-open scent, lifted around them and the pup who had made it. "I am not promising anything yet," Jay said quietly. "I know. But I am not closing the door." "I know." He let his hand fall. The alpha sat there for a long second with his eyes still closed. Then he opened them and looked at Jay. And his face was the face of a man who had received something he had not asked for and was not going to mention. "All right," he said. "All right." The months that followed were not a movie. They were a thing they had to learn how to live. Jay went home from the hospital with the pup in a car seat Jason had installed in his own car the day before, and Jason drove them to Jay's apartment and carried the car seat up the stairs and set it down in the living room next to the daybed and did not stay the night. He went home. He came back the next morning. He brought groceries Jay had not asked for. He set them on the counter. He sat with the pup while Jay slept for a couple of hours on the daybed. He left when Jay was awake enough to manage. He came back the next morning. This was the rhythm. Not romantic, not unromantic. The work of getting through the early weeks of a newborn's life by two people who were learning, in slow and clumsy steps, how to share a child they had never planned to share. The bakery owner gave Jay leave. Mia did not call. Jay did not call her. The space between them sat in a place that was neither closed nor open, and Jay understood that he was going to have to live with it until enough time passed that one of them could reach across. Ryan came once. Just once. He came to Jay's apartment without warning, knocked, waited. Jay let him in. The beta stood in the small living room with the pup asleep on the daybed in the corner, and Jay sitting on the edge of the bed and looked around at the careful, invisible life Jay had built for himself and his son. "I owe you an apology," he said. "All right. I was wrong. I came to your bakery to protect my brother from something I thought was going to break him. I did not understand that the thing breaking him was the version of himself I had been protecting. I should have trusted him to know what to do. I did not. I am sorry. All right. That is what I came to say. Okay? I do not expect you to like me. I do not have an opinion of you yet. Ryan looked at him for a long second. He looked at the pup. Something moved in his face that Jay did not entirely understand. Then he nodded, and he left. And a couple of days later, a delivery arrived at the bakery with a single sealed envelope and a note in handwriting. Jay did not know that said, "For whatever he needs, no strings. R." Jay called Jason. Jason said, "Keep it or send it back. He owes us both. It is your call." Jay kept it. He put it in an account he opened in his son's name. He did not tell Ryan. The pup grew. He slept badly the first month, and better the second, and well enough by the third that Jay began to remember what his own face looked like in daylight. Jason came over most days. Sometimes he stayed for dinner. Sometimes he did not. He learned to change a diaper without being told. He learned which of the pup's cries meant tired, and which meant hungry, and which meant the small, unanswerable cry that just had to be held through. He learned where Jay kept things. He learned which kitchen drawer the bottle warmer lived in and which shelf in the medicine cabinet held the gripe water. Jay watched him learn. There was a night, somewhere in the second month, when the pup had been crying for nearly an hour and nothing had worked, and Jay was sitting on the daybed with tears of pure exhaustion running down his face that he had not bothered to wipe, and Jason was walking the pup in slow circles in the kitchen, his juniper scent low and warm and tired, and the pup, with the perfect, imperfect timing of newborns, fell asleep against the alpha's shoulder. Jason stood in the kitchen doorway holding the pup for a long minute, not moving in case he woke. Jay watched him from the daybed. He watched the alpha sway slightly, side to side, the way he had clearly learned to sway from the past weeks of holding a baby through small bouts of crying. He watched Jason's hand cradle the pup's small head against the curve of his shoulder. He watched, and he understood that something in him had moved without his permission. Jason caught him watching. He did not say anything. He stayed in the doorway. He waited. Jay said, "Stay tonight." The alpha looked at him. On the couch. There is no couch. On the floor. Get the blanket from the closet. I do not want to be alone with him tonight. I am tired. I am not asking for anything else. All right? Jason settled the pup back in the bassinet. He got the blanket from the closet. He made a makeshift bed on the floor of the living room near the daybed where Jay slept, and he lay down on it without complaint and without comment, and Jay listened to him breathe in the dark and slept the first full sleep he had had since the pup was born. In the morning, Jason was already up. The coffee was made. The pup was fed. Jay woke to the small sound of the alpha humming something tuneless and low to a baby who could not yet understand a tune. He lay on the daybed and listened. He did not get up immediately. He let the morning hold them for a minute, his son in the alpha's arms, the kitchen warm, the world, for one moment, a place that was simpler than it had been a year earlier. He got up. He went to the kitchen. He stood in the doorway and looked at Jason holding the pup. "Good morning," Jason said. "Good morning." "You slept." "I slept." "There is coffee." "I see that." "I made toast." "Of course you did." The alpha smiled, just a fraction. The fraction Jay remembered from the bar where they had first met. Jay walked over to the counter. He picked up a piece of toast. He ate it standing up. He did not look at Jason while he ate. He did not need to look at him. He could feel the alpha's scent in the kitchen, the juniper and the peppercorn and the cold sandstone of him, and his own scent in the air with it, the burnt butter and the brown sugar, and the small third scent that the two of them made when they shared a room, and the new small fourth scent that was his son sleeping in his other arm. The kitchen smelled like a bakery with the back door open onto a winter morning. Jay finished the toast. He set the plate down. He looked at the alpha standing by the counter with his son in his arms, and he understood that this was what staying looked like. Not a wedding or a vow or a bonding bite, but the cup of coffee on the counter, the toast he had not asked for, The man at the door who came back the next morning whether or not anyone had told him to. Jason. Yes. I want to try. The alpha went very still. He turned his head slowly to look at Jay. The juniper of his scent did a small, bright thing. To try what? I do not know yet. I am not promising you a wedding. I am not promising you a bond. I am not promising you anything except that I want to find out what we are, the two of us, now that we are this. I want to find out if there is a thing past co-parenting. I want to find out without rushing. I want to find out with him in the room. I do not want to do it any other way. Jason did not move for a long second. Then he set the pup down very gently in the small bassinet on the counter, the one Jay had moved into the kitchen for mornings like this, and he turned to face Jay with both his hands at his sides. I want to try too, he said. Okay. Okay. Come here. He came. He stopped in front of Jay and stood there without touching him, and Jay reached up and put both his hands on the alpha's face, the way he had reached up in the hospital, and he kept them there. The alpha closed his eyes. His scent was the cleanest Jay had ever felt it. No peppercorn sharpness, no juniper bite, just the cold mineral sandstone at the bottom of it. The part of him that was always there underneath. The part Jay was learning was the part that stayed. Jay kissed him. Once. Soft. The kind of kiss two people share when they are not in a hurry and do not need to prove anything to each other. Jason's hands came up to Jay's hips and stayed there. He did not pull him closer. He did not lean in. He let Jay decide the duration. Jay decided. He pulled back. That was not a promise, he said. I know. That was a beginning. I know. The pup made a small sound in the bassinet. Jason looked over. He smiled, the same small fraction. He approves, he said. He has not had an opinion in his entire life. He is reacting to noise. He approves. Jay rolled his eyes. He reached past Jason for the coffee on the counter. He poured himself a cup. He sat down at the small kitchen table where he used to decorate cakes in the evenings, and Jason sat down across from him with the pup in his arms, and the morning sun came through the kitchen window and lit the room in a soft late spring light, and Jay drank his coffee and watched the alpha hold the son neither of them had planned, and he understood that the careful, invisible life he had been building was not over. It had become a different life. The same low ceiling, the same daybed in the living room, the same drawer in the bedroom with the used baby clothes folded inside it. But now also, the coffee on the counter the alpha had made before Jay woke up. The car seat installed in the alpha's car downstairs. The small, soft hat the alpha had bought somewhere on a morning when Jay had been in the hospital. The many small concrete acts of presence that, taken together, made up the answer to a question Jay had been asking himself for a year. Whether someone was going to stay. Someone was going to stay. Whether the someone and Jay were going to be a thing was a question for later. The two of them had time. The pup was going to take a long time to grow up, and the alpha had said he was going to be at the door every morning, and Jay was going to see whether he was, and the two of them were going to figure out the rest of it on the way. The end. Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed the story, tell me your thoughts in the comments. I'd love to hear from you.